Hello and welcome once again to this episode. We're still going to continue with our data organization and data pre-processing, but this particular video is going to focus on a pre-processing step that has to do with splitting your data set into training, validation, and then test sets. So you do training, you split into training, validation, and then test set. Before we speak about this, I want you to get this picture. The meat of neural networks, or the core of everything that happens in a neural network, is this cycle. Every neural network starts off its work as being done, in the sense that its parameters, the weights and biases, or the internal representation of the knowledge or the patterns that it has learned, start out as random numbers. So the neural network starts by making predictions. It makes a predictions and then it compares its predictions to the ground truth. Remember the previous video how we had an output, and then that is a column that contained the truth in our recordings or the data set that we are going to use to train the neural network. So it makes predictions, it compares the predictions to the ground truth, and then it will correct itself by learning. And the correction here, or the learning, happens by the neural network adjusting its weight and biases, or the parameters, in such a way that the next time it goes over the data, it is going to do a much better prediction. So I'm going to give an example. Let's say your ground truth output is supposed to be 1, and the neural network predicts -4. When it does the comparison, it will know that this was supposed to be 1, I predicted -4, so I am way below. So it's going to make adjustment to certain weight such that next time it is going to predict a number that is higher than -4. So that by repeating this cycle, it will get closer and closer and closer to the ground truth. At the point when it gets closest to the ground truth, you say the neural network has learned, and now it becomes useful for you to put it out there and use it to make predictions on newer data sets. Now, I also mentioned that neural networks are data hungry, which means to build any useful neural network, you need huge data sets. A good way of using this data set is to split it into training, test, and then validation. And the reason why this splitting is important is if you use all your data set to train the neural network, how do you test it? If you make a mistake and you test your neural network on the training data that you are using to train it, it will give you a false sense of accuracy. One thing I want you to remember is that neural networks are by nature and design lazy, and they will always choose shortcuts to memorize the data set. Neural networks have huge capacity such that they can memorize huge data sets without actually learning a thing. And the focus here is, the focus of any neural network model is for it to learn patterns well enough that it can generalize these patterns onto never seen data or newer data. So the approach is you split your huge data set. If you have like 100,000, you split it into training, test, and validation. So during the training phase, you use only the training data to train the model, and after training the model, what you do is you test with a test set to measure the accuracy, to know how well it is performing on the test set. And then you leave the validation set and only use it after you have finished the entire training. When you are done training the model, then you use the validation set to validate the accuracy that you got with a test set. And it is also important for you not to mix the validation and the test set, because you will be using the test set to make adjustments to the neural network. And so to get to the point where the neural network will also begin to memorize patterns in the test set instead of actually learning. So this splitting is important. In this video, I'm not making it detailed. I'm just making you aware, because once we start coding, and I understand it is taking so long for us to start coding, but all these foundations are important so that you enjoy and you will understand things better. So always remember, if you have a huge data set, or it's not only if, anytime you're doing training or you are building any solution with neural networks, you need to split into training, test, and validation. And there's a simple rule. There is no golden rule, but what I have found out there is that you can usually reserve maybe 80% of your training data, or of your data set for training, and then you use 10 for validation, and you use 10 for testing. Again, there is no hard rule. The practice of deep learning is more of an art than a science. So there are no rules that will guarantee specific output. It is more of an art, but there are certain guidelines that you can follow. So you can always use 80% of your data set for training, 10 for validation, and 10 for test sets. So this is what I wanted to show you in this video, and I hope you understand and you're enjoying the course so far. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.